What's your story? Whether you're a client or an independent financial advisor, we know you face many important decisions that can affect your and your clients' long-term financial success. Welcome to the WIN Podcast, What's Important Now with Corey Heimensen, accredited investment fiduciary and president of Heimensen Wealth Advisors. In this podcast, Corey helps you identify your goals and objectives through financial education and comprehensive planning, while inspiring you to make better behavioral decisions in your personal finance. With a twist on pop culture and current events, join us as we explore growth and protection strategies for individuals, advisors, and their businesses. Come and discover what's important to you now.
Hello and welcome to the WIN Podcast with Corey Heimensen. Corey, how are you?
Good, Eric. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so excited. I got to meet your guest just briefly before we started. You have a guest in studio today. Who'd you bring on the show?
Yes, it's a longtime friend and colleague of mine, Wes Koedam, and he has a long history in the agricultural field.
Nice.
And he's just a fun guy to hang around. So we're going to take a stab at a podcast and check that off his bucket list.
All right, Wes. Well, consider that bucket list checked, my friend. I'm glad you're on the show.
Well, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
All right, Corey. So what are you guys talking about today then?
Yeah, you know me, Eric. I always throw these little titles out and you wonder what in the heck we're getting into. But I called this one The Dirty Truth. And then long dramatic pause. And then in parentheses, it says of agriculture. So we're going to go down the field of agriculture, and living here in the Midwest. Sometimes a lot of us take it for granted. I think a little bit of what agriculture is and what it means to our country or the world, essentially. And boy, there's a lot going on. And I'm not an expert by any means. So that's why you bring in somebody that knows more than you. And so I thought maybe it'd be fun to talk to Wes and just get some background and see where the conversation goes.
All right. Well, I get to be part of the listening audience today. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And take it away.
So, yeah, I'll just point it to Wes and just give us a little background on who you are, what you believe in.
Corey, thank you for inviting me. I mean, this is something that I'm not, I've done very little of, but I know Eric is at, I just retired. I spent 48 years in the agriculture business, started back in 1973, I think it was. And we wanted to talk about a little bit about the changes that we've seen throughout the last 20, 30 years in agriculture and the finance program, the whatever's involves that puts the egg on your plate or the pork chop on your plate. And that's kind of why I'm here. I've got a few years behind me on that. So hope that turns out well.
So I think it's an insurance company on TV, has those commercials that says they've seen a thing or two, been there, done that or whatever. I think you're probably in that camp, right?
Yeah. It's kind of one of the things that my family grew up here just in Lyon County also. And we had 4 boys. Dad didn't have a big enough farm to get us all farming. So I did the next best thing. I went to work for farmers, managed co-ops for many of them years. And that's kind of how the involvement that I've had with agriculture has been working with farmers.
And yeah, let's talk about the change, I guess. I know even for myself or you, I think decades go by pretty quick. We get that. What do you think the biggest change is from maybe when you were fresh or just kind of getting into that industry versus maybe now? Back in the day, we spent a lot more one-on-one relationships with our customers and stuff like that, and we didn't have all the technology that we have today. So you were the technology, the individual, and we always had opportunities to be part of that gentleman's operation. You got help set his goals, help make it work for him. You had the ability to know his wife by her first name, the kids, the dog, everything. You had the opportunity to be part of their family and their operation back then. It's changed a little bit today just due to the fact that technology's made things so more accessible. And maybe, would you say agriculture in general is more corporate today than maybe just small family farms or not so much?
Oh my, the family farm is probably struggling today. I think it is corporate. It's integrators. The livestock today is not owned by Farmer Brown down the road. It's owned by the Smithfields and companies like that. And we've all become hired men for some of these companies on our own farm. And that's what's changed a little bit, is that it's big. It's has to be big in order to make it work anymore. And that's one of the things that's probably the largest change.
So maybe I should even go back a step. When we talk agriculture, if there's a person sitting in Manhattan in a skyscraper and they've never left their 4-block radius, I mean, I assume their thought of farming would be a person with very non-technical equipment. I'm thinking like 50 years back, you know what I mean? Like a horse and
that you bring up a good point. I think agriculture kind of get a bad deal a little bit about being kind of old fashioned and the bib overall kind of thing, on the cornflake commercial. And that's not true today. That is totally changed. Farming's a big business today, and it's an important business. And I think agriculture does well because the line that I was taught back in the 70s already was that we will feed the world. And we have fed the world. Ag has done a good job of doing that, but we've also been a good job of teaching other countries how to also do good things with agriculture, farming, and technology in that side. So yeah, it's been a big change. And no, the picture with the pitchfork and the shovel, that don't go anymore. It's not that way.
Right. And it's such a rewarding field, but it's difficult. Is that a fair statement for a lot of people?
Yeah, there's a lot of avenues on you got to be able to plan. I mean, and you're always fighting possibly the mother nature in the crop side of it. You're fighting health on the livestock side of it, markets, COVID, you name it, goofy things like that you have zero control of. And that involves a lot of risk that I think agriculture has every day. I mean, it's just like the financial markets or the corn and the commodity markets. Corn goes up 20 cents, corn goes down 20 cents. And that all affects the farmer's day-to-day bottom line and where he's going to be in the future.
You kind of just hit something that it's a flashback in time for me, because I remember sitting down on occasion and arguing of sorts with a friend of mine, but he runs a commodity office. So he's a trader and helps people put trades in place. And, arguably he was always, and I think sort of still is, kind of an anti-stock market person, because he feels the rush from commodity trading essentially. But he and I would argue, because my point was, yes, stock market goes down some years, but essentially if you look at a really, really long chart, it's gone up in the past because of it matches the earnings of companies. So you're investing in corporate or companies where commodities are a product, and I mean? And so, yeah, maybe corn and soybeans are high priced today as we talk relative to other years, but they're kind of in a band, I think. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I don't think corn is going to go to $200 per bushel. No, I mean, does that seem, we're kind of talking apples and oranges, I guess, but
there's a lot of similarities. I mean, you mentioned the ups and downs and the commodity markets, the Chicago Board of Trade, whatever you want to call it. It was a tool given for agriculture to hedge your losses, hedge your gains. So you have an opportunity to, somebody's got to set the base of the price. Someone somewhere has to set what is the value of this product today. And that's what changes. The biggest thing is with foreign exports. The swine industry had to change their whole feeding process because the European nations want different, they don't like growth promoters in their meats and stuff. So they all have the ability to go to the Board of Trade and hedge their markets. We at the co-op couldn't live without the Board of Trade, just for the fact that you have to cover yourself, and where we get big swings basis. I mean, I don't know what in financial jargon that would be, but we always dealt with a lot of basis, meaning the difference between the price on the farm and the difference between the price on Chicago Board of Trade.
Sure.
That was and that's a vital part of the marketing process, and I don't think agriculture could survive without it. They need a place to kind of cover yourself once in a while.
I am having a flashback memory. Eric always loves when I have these flashback memories, right?
We need a sound effect. We really need a sound effect for that.
But you mentioned the Board of Trade, and I'm having a flashback. This is 40 years ago I was a young man. And I remember hearing my first story of the Board of Trade, and it was my grandfather talking about his brother-in-law. And he's no longer with us, so I'm going to still call him out by name. Willard was his first name. But anyway, Willard was not in the farming industry, but he was a commodity speculator, apparently. And the funny part of the story, or the first time I ever heard of the Board of Trade, was because Willard had apparently inadvertently taken delivery of a rail car full of eggs that were sitting in Chicago, and he had no way to get them, move them. I don't know if you have to pay to empty the rail car. I don't know, but I think it was funny to my grandfather, like maybe the brother-in-law wasn't the smartest guy that his story is portrayed. I don't know.
Well, that's one of the dangers of in the agriculture side of people using the Board of Trade. They don't want to turn into a speculator. That is not what makes ag tick today, but they do drift over that way at times. Back in the 70s, we've had some really drastic markets that took a lot of people out. I mean, I remember in the beef swings, back in 79, we had the grain embargo, and all of a sudden, boom, you don't want to take delivery of these products. Like you said, what do you do with it? You can't.
And I think you've hit this a couple times. Things you can control and things you can't control in life. And it doesn't matter if we're talking farming or stock market. A lot of us need to get out of bed and maybe just worry about the things we can control. And as my mother always says, I can control my attitude toward things. When you think you're down and out, you don't maybe have to be.
Well, that's the fun part. I was always sent to various grain seminars and stuff like this, because we were always looking at, okay, how can we make marketing? Means we're in the Chicago board conversation. How can we get marketing to be a better part of farming today? Because there's a lot of scary parts of the Chicago Board of Trade, and you touched on a couple of them, but we always promoted as much as we possibly can to hedge to cover your costs, and because that's where we lived in that world. But I think it's just so important that people realize that it's a tough deal to make them decisions and stuff that determine your destiny. And that's kind of where ag struggles at times. There was a day that our markets were determined by the government. You sealed your grain, and that never, our market in Northwest Iowa is over to the river. Well, that's the farthest part from Iowa. So today, how did we change that market? We talked about livestock. Let's feed it. Let's create a market. And then in the 90s come ethanol. So we create another market. So it's been a good, they all got to work together, I guess. Right. That's where I see it.
What do you think of ethanol? Just first say good, bad, indifferent?
When it first came around as a feed department, we have to buy grain so that was competition for us. We thought when they first come. Today, we couldn't run without them. I think ethanol is I know it's kind of one of these deals that it takes money to make it. It takes natural gas to create ethanol. So we're burning fossil fuels to make ethanol. But I think as an ag sector, we would be lost without the part of ethanol that we have in our backyards today. I think they're a vital part. And I think it's a renewable fuel that we can deal with, we can work with, and it's a good source. And it's become farmer's friend. I really think that gave him another opportunity, another avenue to price their commodities.
Sure.
And turn around and buy it back. The byproducts off of that's what we feed livestock today. It all goes through livestock. So it's a double source. So I hope it stays. I know it's got to be subsidized. I know the government, we did have some subsidies in the ethanol plants. But I think in the Midwest, it's a good deal for us. I really think it is.
Sure. We talk about subsidies. So now I'm going to go off on a tangent. What do you think of wind turbines?
Oh man. I guess if I had a quarter section of land, I'd fill it up with wind turbines because I hear the payment for the leases are really good. I see wind turbines are the problem for the power companies because when it's windy, you have power. When it's not windy, and who's going to fill in that void? Right. When the wind's not blowing and we're not making electricity, do we get a big battery somewhere? How do you store electricity? And I think that's the challenge, I think, with the windmills. I know it's really a new thing. And again, it's kind of subsidized. I understand.
Right.
And I think it's a good renewable source, but I don't know how it's a costly source too, I think.
Yeah. Because if I understand right, I don't think they can store the electricity. Is that right? It has to almost just go and be used.
Right. And that's where I think our power companies struggle because they're required to take that electricity and use it. It's part of the grid. But it's not a consistent grid, and that's just how I see it. I wish the folks down the road, REC could tell you a whole lot better story about it. But I think it's a challenge for them people to have to deal with for their infrastructure to be able to handle that kind of stuff.
Sure,
and it's not consistent. It's not always. It's not always windy. So I think, but I can see the value in it too. Like in California, it's been there for years. I can understand that's probably a viable source, but up here it's still new yet, I think.
Sure. You talked about commodities. Well, we've talked a lot about commodities, but if we sat in a commodity office, a trading office for a day, do you think there would be more hedging done by the average agriculture person in a day or more speculating?
In agriculture, I think the hedging's we've become educated. Okay. Dad sends the son to college, gets an education. He understands it. And I think the son takes over some of the marketing process. They're not fearful of the Board of Trade. So I think today, I wouldn't dare to say what percentage. There's some speculating still done. Don't kid yourself.
Sure.
That's not going to go away, but I think today the majority of agriculture is disciplined, and they use it as an insurance factor.
Sure.
In their day-to-day products.
Well, and when you talk discipline, I know you and I talked a little bit off air too of banking in this type of industry and you talked about risk, that there's so many variables. Do you think the bankers treat, I'm trying not to step on any toes or throw the bankers under the bus, but do you think bankers treat people in the ag industry that are borrowing money differently than the guy or gal running a retail store or a car dealership, or you know what I mean?
I don't always want to go back to the bad times, but again, in the 80s when we dealt with double-digit interest rates and stuff, and us as a co-op, we got burned with some of the banks. We stuck the feed into the livestock. The livestock went to sale. The bank kept the check. And, we struggled with that. We got through it. But, in the 80s, because, we always sat at the banker's desk and say, what percentage of that check can we get? He says, none, it's mine. And that was hard to deal with. And it made the feed suppliers negative. I mean, it was you didn't want to do anything, but there was no cash. You had to have borrowing capabilities. And so you needed the banks. The banks had to be your friend. And the good thing that came out of any of these challenges and struggles were, I think we made better managers out of people when things were tough. You can sell a new car, finance a new boat, and you can go get that boat again. You can get that car. You can get it back. They don't make the payments. You get it back. You can't do that in farming. Again, about the risk, if it hails, if it don't rain, if it, the cattle get sick, the hogs die, and that all happens. That's a real thing. And I think they had a tough job. They had a tough job to determine what is my risk here? Can I get this back?
Right. And I see this all the time sitting at my desk or my conference room table with people that they forget that banks are businesses out to make a profit. You know what I mean? And they think, well, how come the bank won't pay me for my deposits? Well, at the end of the day, the bank is trying to make money. They're going to be your friend because they want to loan you money, but they want to get paid.
Yep. And again, the dollar bill is a commodity. It is a commodity to the bank, and you bet they got to pay for when they stick the key in the door. They know how many dollars they need to come in with every day. Right. And I think it's just another business that working together with a clear communication is still key to banks. But agriculture had some tough years, and banks got some bad raps.
Sure.
A lot of people ended up with government financing, FMHA, stuck their neck out and helped a lot of these guys get through. And thank goodness they did, because I think there's some people here today that did that, are still here, and they're profitable today. But not all of them made that.
Right.
So
how about your best story from your career? Best or funniest or memorable, or any of the above?
No, mine, there's probably 40 years of that. But in our my business here, when I managed in Rock Rapids here, we had we have a feed mill. And I'm going to tell you this, I don't know if that's funny to anybody, but we always had to have become HACCP certified to be able to make animal food. And you notice I said food, because it's the same food as what you and me eat. But anyhow, we had an inspection process that happened every year. And heaven forbid, if you were to fail your inspection as a manager, that was a big deal. So part of that goes, I get outside at the end of the day. I tell all the guys, hey, we're gonna clean up and get everything spotless. So the inspector gets here, we'll be impressed. And so I start the process of cleaning down the basement, and I'm kind of losing what time it is. I figured all of a sudden nobody's around. So I go upstairs, and this is pretty bad. I'm supposed to be managing this place, but I come upstairs. They locked the door and left me in the basement. And they went home. In a way, I think it's funny, and I think, you know what, you sure messed that one up, Koedam. But anyhow, that's maybe one of the dumbest things that ever happened. We had opportunities to work with some powerful, good people, and I think they all felt bad when it was all done, But anyhow, we passed the inspection, so that was a big thing.
Kind of how a mutiny starts, I think.
Oh yeah.
How about, I'll throw you this. We're getting off the rails a little bit, but it's kind of fun. And I like to ask this question of everybody, but is there a famous person that you've run across or met or sat in the same room with that would be of interest?
Oh my. Well, that's a big question. I come from a community of 200 people. There are not many famous people come to a community in Midwest in the Lyon County. But again, through the years of all the training that we did through the co-op system and stuff, I had the opportunity to sit through a seminar with Coach Lou Holtz. And at the time, we were trying to come up with ideas, and it's a motivational speech. And I declare him as kind of a shaker in the motivational world. I think he's done well with his football coaching, and it turns out that was what we have to be back in the business world too. Was we have to be a coach, we have to guide our team, and that's what I was doing there. So I guess he would be the most famous person that I was ever a chance to meet and listen to, and I know not everybody liked the man, but I think he had some really great qualities of training people.
Sure. Along those lines, I was at a conference once, and football coach Brian Billick spoke. He had coached the Ravens, won a Super Bowl, Baltimore Ravens, and he said this quote. It was talking about hiring good employees essentially. And I think he stole the quote from somebody else, but the quote was essentially, it's kind of like a ham and egg breakfast. The chicken's involved, but the pig is committed, and that the point was you wanted more employees that are committed to the project, but he might've said 25 other really good things, but I only kept that one nugget,
Hope that's true. That chicken, he went home again, but the pig didn't make it home. Yeah, no, I believe that too. And I think one of his books, I think Mr. Holtz wrote, the title was Win, Lose, and Learn. And that is such a true statement today, not only in agriculture. I think it's in family lives. It's in the financial world, where Corey gets to be he's my coach, and he's got a team back here doing the same thing. So very easy to relate back to. And I think, there's some good things there.
Sure. And even you, I know we got to wrap up here pretty soon, but I'll throw this out there. You've had a career change in recent times. I mean, has that been what you expected or?
Wow. Yeah. We retired in 2020. And if you remember what date that was, the beginning, kind of the COVID. And retiring is scary. When you've been able to have a paycheck every day for your whole career, and all of a sudden you don't get a paycheck next week. How do we do this? But what's mainly, I had a wise man tell me one thing when we retired, because I'd always ask everybody, how much money you need? How much money you need to retire? Well, nobody had an answer, so I never got that question answered. But this gentleman says, when you retire, take your time. Take a little time to step back and see how retire. Take it for a test run. And that was Corey Heimensen that told me that.
But I did.
Yeah, you did. And we did that. We sat back 1 year, kind of got used to our little budget thing, pay attention or have the ability to be in more activities and stuff. But I really know why people retire now. I mean, it's scary, but yet that first step is a big one. Yeah. And but it all turns out really well. But you need people in your court. I mean, it's important, I think, to have a fallback guy, because you worked your whole life for a amount of money, and you hand it over, and there's some people that are concerned about that, but I think it's to do with trust.
And I think, and thanks. I took that as a compliment. I don't even know if it was, but
it was a funny compliment.
Yeah. But I think it comes back to attitude too, don't you think? Whether you're a working guy or gal, or if you're a retired guy or gal, you got to get out of bed and have the right attitude, don't you think?
Well, I think anybody that retires and says, "Oh, I don't know what I'm going to do," well, that's a false statement. There is many things you can do to fill in your time, and we found that little niche, and we've been having my wife and I have been having a fun time doing it. We do some things that we've never done in the past. We always talk about traveling. We haven't gotten there yet, but gas is too high, so we stayed away from that. But I think it's a good end to a career is find a company that you can trust with your lively. That's many years of work. You're hard to let it go, but it's trust and faith in the people you hand it to.
Sure. Will you ever kind of phase out in your life the love for agriculture and farming, or is that just you're done with that?
Oh, no. My wife gets on me. I still watch RFD on TV. I watch the markets. No, I don't think that'll ever leave me. I still enjoy watching.
Yep.
I think I'm falling behind on the new trends, the new technologies and stuff. Cause if we look back at the seed genetics that have changed, I mean, it's unbelievable. The crop protection, products that they have today, keeping the weeds and everything, the nutrients, all these new things I've fallen behind on. The other day I was painting a picket fence and this plane was flying over us, applying something while he's flying fungicides. That's cool. So them little things I fall behind, but no, I still watch markets. I do.
And there's technology everywhere, so when I talk about that person in Manhattan that hasn't seen a cornfield or knows what a pork belly is, I mean, technology improves all things in our society. And that's, there we go. I'm going off another tangent. That's why you invest,
Absolutely. You talk about, we got some friends here in Rock Rapids. It's harvest time. So we're going to be in the combine, but you know what? They got a book in the combine. And it says, when do you get time to read? Well, I read while I'm combining, because they don't steer the combine anymore. It's all GPS. And then things are just, I don't understand how that works, but it does. And it's an awesome thing.
So the biggest takeaway for listeners out there is that automatic driving was probably in place in farm machinery before it was in electric cars.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We always make reference to the Jetsons. Well, we're in the Jetsons era right now, I think. And agriculture's got some really nice equipment. I mean, it's big and green or red or whatever color it is, but they're gorgeous. But the negative to that is the capital it takes to own that stuff. It's unbelievable.
You get what you pay for.
Absolutely.
There you go. I'm pretty sure Eric has a George Jetson tattoo. Is that right, Eric?
I do. We won't say which one, but it's on my hip, and that's all we'll say.
Oh, I was just going to ask, where did you put that?
It's my right hip. That's where the Jetson tattoo needs to be in my book, at least.
Oh my God, I couldn't help it. I had to throw that at you, man.
Oh, sure, by all means. So, Wes, I do have a question for you that has absolutely nothing to do with kind of what you've spoken about already, except for one thing. I hope you share this podcast with your wife, because this involves her. You haven't gotten to traveling yet. And as a man, that it sounds, what I'm getting is that you love the land, you appreciate God's beauty, you appreciate what the earth in its entirety has to offer. If money wasn't an object and, gas prices were super cheap, or jet fuel was, where's the one place that you would want to visit first when you get ready to travel? Where's the one place you want to go and see? We've talked many times. We've flown to California. We've done some of them things, but and you mentioned God's grace. I mean, it's the Grand Canyon is something that was made not by man, Mm-hmm. And before I get to hit the grave, I would like to. I like nature. I like the trees, the things that the good Lord made for us, and I think the Grand Canyon would probably be my first choice if I could just buzz over there and just look at the vast. I see pictures and everything. Mm-hmm. Totally impressed with that. Yeah, it is impressive. As someone who has been there, definitely on the bucket list. So you've checked off podcasts. Now it's time to check off the Grand Canyon, friend.
There we go. Right. I better tell my wife this.
There you go. Absolutely. Well, Wes, thank you so much for being on the show, sharing your time, your knowledge, your wisdom with us. Corey, people need knowledge, wisdom, and that's where you come in, right? Wes said it best. You're part of the team. You're part of the overall plan, and you're helping clients every day retire. And this is something that people do once, right? We retire one time, but you do this over and over and over and over again with clients. So you have the experience. How do they get a hold of you if they want to talk about maybe setting up their own plan?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would mention also that it's not just the day you retire. That 5 years before you retire and the 5 years after, that 10-year window is critical point in your life to have somebody on the team. And so if you'd like to give us a call, we're happy to visit with you. That's 800-657-4316.
Thank you again, gentlemen, for this podcast. It was great. And of course, our last thank you goes to the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Win Podcast with Corey Heimensen. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Corey comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. We humbly ask that you share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review, as this actually does help others find the show. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Heimensen Wealth Advisors, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Win Podcast. What's important now? The show that helps you achieve your financial dreams. To ask questions about topics covered during the show or get a copy of Stop Doing Dumb Things with Your Money by Corey Heimensen, visit www.heimensenwealth.com or give us a call at 712-472-3867. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. Securities offered through Securities America Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Securities America Advisors Inc. Heimensen Wealth Advisors and Securities America are separate entities.